Jag tänkte göra det här på utrikiska, jag hoppas det är okej. Det är lite lättare för mig. Hello everybody! Prototyping. I'm going to talk about prototyping a little bit. From the perspective of Minecraft development. When we make a feature in Minecraft, it goes through a number of steps, like for most products. And one of the early steps is trying to figure out what the heck, how should this feature work? And that involves a lot of experimentation. And finally, we narrow down to something that, OK, this I think will work. As part of that, we throw away a lot of prototypes. And this is important to realize that that's not waste. That's like a necessary, crucial part of making a good design. Stuff needs to be tested and thrown away. And then we narrow it down to the single most promising design hypothesis, ship it, and then every week we ship an update and get feedback and kind of do the agile thing. But I want to talk about this squiggly part in the beginning. And it's really about kind of finding the awesome. We want to find a feature that is fun, but that, of course, technically feasible and achieves that design goal. And we're not going to find that on the first attempt. So we have to kind of waffle around a little bit until we find it. And a really important part of that is that that involves both a gameplay perspective, which is the player perspective, but also a tech perspective. So we want to adapt the technology to the design goals of the feature. But we also want to sometimes adapt the design to the technology we have. So prototyping is both playing with the game itself, but also exploring, like doing tech spikes, things like that. Really important to cover both perspectives. And another part of that is to realize that in the beginning, when prototyping a feature, quality doesn't matter at all. If we spend time trying to write clean code and writing tests, that's an absolute waste of time, which will just slow down our learning. But later on, as we start stabilizing the design, then quality becomes gradually more and more important. And this is where there's a bit of a problem. If you apply, for example, Scrum by the book, this can lead you in the wrong direction. This is the Scrum Guide. It's a book which is about Scrum. And in it, there's a whole page about how important it is to, each increment is thoroughly verified, must be usable, it needs to meet the definition of done, and that has to include meeting the quality measures for the product. Basically, don't do prototyping, is what this says. And that's the problem. We wouldn't get a successful game such as Minecraft if we did this. It's useful sometimes, when incrementally improving something you already have, for example. So there are cases where this is good, but like anything, you need to think about why is this part of Scrum, when is it good, and when is it not, right? So I'll talk a bit more about that. This is an example. Oh my God, maybe lower the volume a little bit. Just a tiny bit, yeah. Example, we added a dripstone, which is stalagmites and stalactites in Minecraft about a year ago. And I didn't even know this slide had sound. That's funny. Anyway, we can have a bit of sound. But these are examples of what we call sub-features that we explored. So what could dripstone do for you? What might make it fun? So we kind of split it into smaller things, and then we explore each of those things and how they fit together. So if we did, oh yeah, so when building a feature, prototyping is cheating, right? We're taking shortcuts, we're hacking stuff, we're doing copy-paste just to see what is this like in the game. But when then building the feature properly, we got all this other stuff to do, right? All the time we need to spend on performance, code cleanup, handling weird edge cases, writing tests. All this stuff has to be done, but not initially in the beginning. So if we make a map of all the work that needs to happen, like for the different sub-features, then if we were to do Scrum by the book, we would do this, right? Single piece flow, finish the first feature, then do the second one. And then we wouldn't be able to make a holistic design, exploring how these features work together. So again, this has its place, but early prototyping and innovative feature development is not that place. So instead, our approach, and I would say most successful game companies have something similar, is that you explore multiple features in parallel and explore how they work together as a system. And that's how you find the fun. And then you gradually get into proper implementation and finally performance, all these kind of things. That's important, but that's not a learning part, right? The learning part is prototyping. Fixing performance and bugs and all that is more finalizing things. Super important, but not from the beginning. So it's not quite doing horizontal slices. I would say it's more like diagonals. It looks a bit messy, but it's a pragmatic approach to applying Scrum in a product development context. Yes, so I'm going to give some examples of what this can look like in practice. I worked on these two creatures a few years ago, Piglin to the left and Hoglin to the right. And one of the goals for this was to add a sense of ecosystem to the nether dimension in Minecraft. And as part of that, one hypothesis was that we would add hunting. These creatures hunt each other. So how should hunting work? We have some goals, right? Hunting should be a bit back and forth. It shouldn't be too predictable. It shouldn't happen all the time. So we had some design goals. But to explore those design goals, we set up a bunch of AI kind of rules for how these creatures should behave. But instead of exploring that in the code, I just made sticky notes, and we played around in a conference room, saying, OK, I'm going to be the piglins, you be the hoglins. Now let's apply these rules. And what happens? Oh, shit, hoglins always lose. That's boring. Let's try something different. And then gradually we moved to coding prototyping mode, and then gradually morphed the code. Well, we also used that as a prop. And then we gradually morphed the code. Oh, God. I'll just be quiet. This is what we ended up with. This is a hunt going on. You see it goes kind of back and forth. We learned through prototyping that a key aspect was outnumbering. So when the piglins got outnumbered, they ran away. Now the hoglins took over, and we got a lot of back and forth. But finding that mechanic was useful to do in a cheap way using paper prototyping. We don't do a lot of paper prototyping. Mostly we prototype in the code. But this is just an example. But the question then is, OK, what do you do with the prototype? Like, a lot of people would say you're supposed to throw away the prototype when you're done, because the prototype is a mess, which it is. But in other cases, it makes sense maybe to start from the prototype, because it contains a lot of knowledge, and then iterate from it. And a really important point here is don't standardize this. Let the team decide case by case, feature by feature, because both approaches really do have value depending on the context. So resist the temptation to tell the team that you need to do this or you need to do that. Both are options, and they're both good. So, like I mentioned, some prototypes don't make the cut. This was one like we thought maybe the flopping of the ears could show the mindset of this piglin. And it actually worked. It did show the mindset of the piglin, but we also concluded that it's not really that important, and it's not worth kind of going the last mile to finish this. So this we scrapped, even though it technically kind of worked. Another hypothesis we had was that if baby piglins interact with baby hoglins, that will create a sense of ecosystem. They don't hate each other. They just sometimes hunt each other. But then we noticed by accident that, wait a sec, it's really easy to make them stack on top of each other, technically. It wasn't in our, we didn't imagine that from the beginning, we just stumbled over it. And this is another part of prototyping. You may find opportunities that weren't part of the plan, and then seize them. So in this particular case, it turned out to be dead easy to do, so we're like, yeah, let's do circus piglins. But of course, we had to put some limits to it. I was trying to find out how far can this go. It turned out that, well, it keeps going until something happens in the code that makes them all just fall down, and then they die, and it gets kind of morbid. So we decided that maybe we limit it to 3, right? And this was an example of just prototyping to see how stuff works in the code. Like, what happens if the creatures celebrate, right? It turned out that, yeah, it can get really cool. We didn't actually put this in because it was a little bit over the top, but it was a great way to learn the animation system, learn what's possible to do. And we did add other similar types of things, but not as kind of, unhinged, right? Even concept art is a form of prototyping. A cheap way to explore, like we recently added mangroves. What should those look like? Well, we have concept artists who can draw pictures and inspire us, and then maybe later on put it in code. It just saves time. So, here's an example when we added new caves recently, and noticed by accident that the new technology for making caves makes all the caves flooded under sea level. That's bad. But it was also an opportunity, because I took that and started exploring, well, what if we just lower the global sea level temporarily to see what happens if we have water in caves, but only partially flooded? It turned out to be amazing. Like, you get underwater bodies of water, you can explore the underground with a boat. So we actually put that in the game, but not everywhere. So that the tech risk also became a tech opportunity. OK, and of course, if we replace water with lava, you can get cave systems like this, which is really epic. But anyway, wrap up. Key points here. Effective prototyping helps you discover opportunities and risks in both the player perspective and the technology. Don't be too obsessive about potentially shippable product increment, right? It's a good principle. Don't overdo it. Let the team decide how to prototype. Discarded prototypes are not waste. They are value. Make sure you have space for it. And if you have an environment that is innovative, make sure it's really easy to do prototypes, to try things out quickly. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.